Welcome back, Lord of the Rings fans. This is the Lotr Gamer YouTube channel. Today I'll be doing a quick review of the Magic the Gathering Commander deck themed to Aragorn the Uniter. So that is the Aragorn card that uses the same picture as my playmat. So that's this guy right here. So that's the Commander card that I use for my Aragorn Commander deck. But before we do that, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell to be notified of any future videos. And before we actually review the deck, I would like to introduce two boxes, which will be featured in future videos. But I would like you to vote on which box you'd like me to open up first. Would you like me to open up first the original Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth Collector Booster box, or the Collector Booster Special Edition from the second release of Tales of Middle-earth? So based on your comments below, my next video for MTG Lord of the Rings related content, I'll open up which box first essentially, and then of course, I'll open up the other box afterwards. But just for time reference, we're in the month of April, so whatever one has the most votes, I'll likely release a video for that box before the end of April, and then the runner-up box will be opened up later in probably closer to the end of May, possibly even in June. So whichever one you want me to open up first, it's just based on your votes in the comment section. So be sure to pick. And not to sway any votes, but I had an extra pack of a collector edition, so I figured why not? I'd use this opportunity to do a quick rip here. So don't let this persuade your vote, but let's rip into it right now. Got a nice shiny human token. Got Smite the Deathless. Wizard's Rockets. Stern Scolding. That must be Pippin. Duodane Rangers. Deceive the Messenger. Mirkwood Spiders, Stew the Conies, Gandalf, Friend of the Shire. It's a nice card. Oh, a nice shiny land. We got a rare Arwen, Weaver of Hope. Nice. A shiny Motivated Pony. Pretty cool. A Scortress Squall. I think that's part of the scene boxes. I can't remember exactly. We got Sauron's Ransom. Don't think that's worth anything too special. And Faramir, Prince of Ithilien. And Elvish Harbing. Interesting art there. The Mirror of Gladriel. Nice Surge foil with Faramir. Not entirely sure. I don't think it was anything too fancy there. But I'm sure it'll be a little different in this box. Or this box, or both. So yeah, be sure to make your vote which one you would like me to pick first. Just put in the comment section, either collector booster or special edition collector booster as your vote. Just say my vote is blank. All right, so let's move into the quick review of the deck. So I pulled out mainly the kind of like the cool Lord of the Rings cards of the deck, and I'll actually link the full deck list in the description. But it's only, I don't know, maybe 40% of the 100 card commander deck is like pure named Lord of the Rings cards. The rest are kind of reprints or kind of like filler cards. So of course we start off with Aragorn the Uniter. And what's kind of cool about him is once he's in play, he's a quad colored commander. And once he's in play, if you cast basically any of these colored spells, various things happen. So if you cast a white spell, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, which we'll be doing a lot of in this deck. If you cast a blue spell, you'll scry 2, which we won't be doing as much in this deck. Whenever you cast a red spell, you deal 3 damage to a target opponent. And when you cast a green spell, you target creature gets +4/+4 until the end of the turn. So those last two we'll be doing quite a bit as well. So pretty strong there. Next we have Éomer, King of Rohan. He has double strike, so basically he gets to attack twice. And when he enters the battlefield, you add a 1/1 counter for each other human you control. So that's based on the number of humans that are already in the battlefield that you control. So another big kind of component of this deck is it's kind of like a human travel deck. So a good like 90% of the 25, I think, or so creatures are humans. Like a good majority of them are humans. So it kind of works well together with having lots of humans. And then whenever Éomer enters the battlefield, target player becomes the monarch. Éomer deals damage equal to its power to any target. So a quick note, I switched out the other Aragorn, who's a little more monarch friendly, so we actually care a little less on the monarch front. So that's okay there. Next we have Aragorn and Arwen Wed. So this creature has vigilance, and whenever they enter the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on them for each creature you control. So kind of like instead of each human you control, this one you just add a 1/1 counter on for each creature. So that kind of is pretty sweet there. Plus you gain 1 life for each creature you control as well. So that's pretty handy. And then if you have any cards that kind of returns them to your hand and then you can play them again, then you can kind of reactivate their enter the battlefield game text. So we have Elrond, Master of Healing. So he works pretty well with scrying. So I know we don't have too many blue cards in this deck, but we do have a fair bit, so it should come in handy a little bit. But whenever you scry, you put a 1/1 counter on each. Whenever you scry, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of cards looked at when you scry this way. So like when we scry 2 from Aragorn, we can put a 1/1 counter on up to 2 target creatures. Whenever a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. So that's pretty handy for drawing cards. Next we have Galadriel, Light of Valinor, and this is from the scene box that you can get with that came out with the second wave of Tales of Middle-earth releases. This card was actually kind of hard to come by, so I was stuck actually having to buy a box just to get this card for this deck. But very strong, because whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can choose one of these three options that you haven't chosen yet, essentially. So if Galadriel's in play and you play three different creatures, once creature one's played, you can choose one of them. If you play a second creature, then you can choose anyone except for the one that you chose when you played creature one, if that makes sense. So basically, like if Galadriel was the only person in play, and then you played Elrond next, you can add 3 forest mana into the mana pool, and then you could use that to, say, play Aragorn and Arwen wed, using up, there we go, using up one of those 3 forest to pay for them. And then because you played another creature, you can choose another one of the options, but you can't add 3 more forest because you've already used it. You must put a counter on each creature you control, or scry 2, then draw a card. And then so forth. So that's kind of how that works. So definitely a great card to have. And it helps kind of synergize with the whole scrying. Next we have Theoden, King of Rohan. Another fun card to play, because whenever Theoden or another human enters the battlefield under your control, a target creature gains double strike. So if you already have like a mitten full of creatures, one might be beefed up with a sword or something and ready to fight. When Theoden enters, you can make that creature have double strike, so it can attack twice. So pretty cool. And on top of that, when you play Theoden, you've used a red spell, so then you can use, oh no, scratch that, it's green. But if you would have done a green spell first, make that character +4/+4, and then give him double strike from Theoden, then it's even more bad news bears for your opponent. All right, so next we have Eowyn, Shield Maiden. So she has first strike, so basically the damage is done to the opponent first before her. And then at the beginning of combat, on your turn, if another human enters the battlefield under your control, this turn create 2 red human knight creature tokens with trample and haste. Then if you control 6 or more humans, draw a card. So there's another kind of synergy with all the humans that are going to be on the battlefield. So pretty sick there. Another one of our non-human creatures. I'll kind of keep them off to the side, actually. We'll kind of keep a little count. So another non-human creature we have is Gandalf the White. So he has Flash, which means you can play him essentially anytime, even if it's your opponent's turn, as long as you have the mana to play him. And you may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had Flash. And my understanding of that, I'm still pretty new to this game, but creatures are also spells. So like a legendary creature has Flash speed as well. So you can play a creature. If Gandalf's in play, you can play a legendary creature with Flash as well. If a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control, that ability triggers an additional time. So that would come into play for like entering the battlefield kind of situations. So for instance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, so make a note that it's if a legendary permanent or an artifact. So legendary permanent. So if using Galadriel's ability, if a legendary creature such as Aragorn triggers her ability to add 3 forest into the mana pool, if Gandalf was in play, it would actually add an additional 3, making it 6 forest into the mana pool. So that's part of the reason why these 3 non-humans are in this human deck, because they work very well together. Another handy non-human is Delightful Halfling. Just a cheap character. You can add a colorless mana, or you can add mana of any color. And if you spend this mana to cast a legendary spell, that spell can't be countered. So that's pretty handy as well. We also have Aragorn, Hornburg Hero. So attacking creatures you control have first strike and Renown 1. Renown 1 is when a creature with Renown 1 deals combat damage to a player. If it isn't renowned, put a 1/1 counter on it and it becomes renowned. So that's good. That's good for adding more 1/1 counters. Whenever a renowned creature you control deals combat damage to a player, double the number of 1/1 counters on it. So this is where this guy will become really handy, because if we have renowned creatures in our control, all the 1/1 counters from various people entering the battlefield and whatnot. And there's other non-Lord of the Rings human cards in this deck that kind of add lots of counters to other humans. So this card will become very, very powerful if we can double counters on creatures. So thank you, other Aragorn. Next we have Boromir. He has Vigilance, so basically he doesn't have to tap to attack. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Not a bad kind of passive move there. And then you can sacrifice Boromir. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of the turn, and then the ring tempts you. So that's pretty awesome here. And then next we have kind of like some 2 no-name human cards. We have Harsh Mentor, Human Cleric. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. So that's a good way to kind of chip away at your opponent's life. And then we also have Riders of the Mark. So this spell it's kind of a pricey card, but it costs 1 less, like 1 colorless mana less for each human you control. So if it's later in the game, in theory, this 7/4 card could cost only one red mana, and then have Trample and Haste. And at the beginning of your end step, so that's at essentially the end of your turn, if Riders of the Mark attack this turn, return it to its owner hand. If you do, create a number of 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens equal to its toughness, which is essentially its health. So that would just, assuming those soldiers tokens survive until your next turn, it just helps with keeping them cheap for next time. So that's our creatures. Next we'll kind of dive into the some of the other cool cards. Some of the artifacts and the instants that we have in this deck. We'll try to whip through them fairly quickly. We have the Horn of Gondor, great for creating human tokens. We have Arwen, Narsil Reforged. Whenever equipped creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. If you have the city's blessing, put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control instead. So it has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. So that's pretty sweet. Next we have, because this deck relies on kind of doing a lot of spells and instances and whatnot to kind of trigger Aragorn's ability or his various abilities. We do have a lot of instances. So one is Friendly Rivalry. So target creature control and up to one other target legendary creature control each deal damage equal to their power to target creature you don't control. It's basically 2 target creatures you control can team up their power and deal some damage to a target creature you don't control. So pretty good. Then we have Legolas's Quick Reflexes. So as Split Second, which my understanding is you basically can play this like Flash but faster. As long as the spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. But basically you can quickly untap a creature, and until the end of that turn it gains hexproof, reach, and whenever this creature becomes tapped, it deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature. So that's pretty sweet. We have Orlain's Searing Light. So this is part of, excuse me. This was part of the Gandalf scene box. Each opponent exiles a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. So that's a good way to kind of make everyone lose their strongest guy. And then also has Spell Mastery. So if there are 2 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, Orlan's, I can never say that. Orlan's Searing Light deals damage to each opponent equal to the power of the creature they exiled. Ooh, that sucks. Galadriel's Dismissal. So this was actually from the scene box as well. It seemed decent enough to try out, and it's low costing. So if you pay the additional kicker cost, you may pay an additional kicker cost as you cast the spell. Target creature phases out. If this spell was kicked, each creature target player controls phases out instead. Treat phased out creatures and anything attached to them as though they don't exist until their controller's next turn. So basically each creature and everything attached to them is essentially off the table for like an entire turn. So that really sucks. Or if you don't play the kicker, then it's just a target creature. Then we have Flame of Vanor. Choose one. If you control a wizard, as you cast the spell, you may choose 2 instead. So target player draws 2 cards, destroy a target artifact, and deal 5 damage to target creature. Alright, we got this guy, 4th Erlingas, also great. Depending on how much you want to pay for creating a lot of red human knight tokens with trample and haste. We have taunt from the rampart. Goading all creatures your opponents control until your next turn. Those creatures can't block. So until your next turn, those creatures attack each combat if able and attack a player other than you if able. So goading basically forces your opponent's creatures to attack, and they can't block, and they can't attack you. So it really sucks in a multiplayer game. And then we have shared animosity. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gains +1/+0 until the end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. So this is good for, human tribal decks, for instance. And then we have Dawn of New Age. When it enters the battlefield with a hope counter on it for each creature you control, at the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from it. If you do, draw a card. If it has no counters on it, sacrifice it and gain 4 life. So pretty good for drawing cards, and then you get 4 life at the end. So pretty sweet for only 1 and white cost. Same with Flowering of the White Tree, costs 2 white. Legendary creatures you get +2/+1, have ward 1. Non-legendary creatures you control get +1/+1. So not too bad. And ward 1, I forgot to look this one up. I think it means something your opponent has to do to pay 1 to do something. Well, if you can think of it offhand, be sure to leave it in the comments. And lastly, I only picked out, I try to get all the cool Lord of the Rings lands that are actually relevant, somewhat relevant to this deck. So we have the Shire, which was pretty cool. I try to get foil ones too. So we have the Shire, Weathertop, Minas Tirith, Rivendell, Mines of Moria, the Inn of the Prancing Pony, and Fangorn Forest. All right, and that's basically the Aragorn the Uniter human tribal deck that I typically run with, and that's been quite fun to play with so far. As I mentioned, I'll be sure to link the full deck list. So be sure to leave your comments and critiques in the comments below. I'd be happy to hear them. I'm always looking for improvements. And don't forget, more importantly than anything else, is to place your votes on which box you'd like me to open up first. Box 1, the first box that came out, or box 2, because I'm dying to open up both of them. And I will be doing one at a time. And I'm not picky, I'm patient. I'll open up whatever one you guys want me to open up first. So take your pick, put your vote in the comment section, and we'll go from there. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.